Starting lineup: Gnar, Wukong, Brand, Caitlyn, Blitzcrank up against Yone, Zyra, Ari, Jinx, Lux. Rating of the picks for a casual game: Gnar as a top 8, Brand as a mid 8, Caitlyn as a shooter 10, Blitzcrank as support 7. Yone as a top 4. Zyra in the jungle 4. Ari as a mid 6. Jinx as a shooter 5. Lux as a support 6. Yone seems to really be a bit like the Cho'Gath of shooters. I wonder whether they're planning to put any kind of nerf on him, because with the right perspective, which I'm sure that the right perspective is that you shouldn't have zero front line, you shouldn't be all mages, you shouldn't be all shooters. I'm absolutely convinced of that. And so considering that he's really a shooter, he has a very outsized impact on the game very regularly. And whereas it's true that many people struggle with how his shopping list is and how narrow the items are that you can really get with him, even the burden of amateurs assuming that he's some kind of tough guy who can take a bunch of damage, or that he's some kind of mean mad hustler, it seems to be worth it given the potential for AoE output that he has. He would have to be considered an all-out damage dealer shooter. This really speaks to how much of an edge that he has over champions that are really in the game for the same thing. Because now just picture that you would play Jinx up against Gnar in that slot. And then imagine that Jinx would leave her lane and start going after people. I'm starting to think that as a pure damage dealer, Yone is really, together with Caitlyn, the best possible pick. The fact that you can bring such levels of damage that you overcome, that you're really out of character and out of role, and that you do not have anybody tanking for you or putting up any kind of wall for you, I think Yone has to end up in that top 3 shooter list, and I really wonder whether they're planning to do anything about his wild dominance. Because at this point, as a pure damage dealer, there just seems to be no downside to him whatsoever. We see here early game ambush between a Dutch boy who made all the right choices, and then another boy who made all the wrong choices, a Jinx boy. When you do this type of thing on Caitlyn, it is far more effective because of the fact that her range is enormous. So when you do these little early game ambushes on champions that can't reach anywhere, champions that are in melee, or champions that have to hover around like Jinx, you will lose a lot of the benefit of doing so. This is almost like Caitlyn was specifically put in the game with a early ambush skill. Very few people will have the sense to see it that way, but when you think about it, her attack range is almost like a spell. It is effectively a skill. In order to reproduce something like this with Jinx, you would have to get every one of your stun gun shots to hit the right target all of the time. Caitlyn doesn't have to do anything. She just has to go, because it's just her default range. You can't get away from her. And so having Caitlyn on your team can make these worthless little early game plays significant. Isn't it comical that when you're under a certain player tier, in the gray zone with the amateurs, with people who have nothing on their resume, you will see totally different turret interactions, right? These people essentially are unaware of the fact that the turrets are especially tanky in the beginning, specifically to create an arena so that essentially parties on both sides of the lane cannot get away from each other because there is the immovable object of the turret standing in the way, right? And they absolutely want to keep it that way. So we have these little duels in the beginning of the game. This is why, before 14 minutes in or so, it is entirely pointless, really, to grind hard on turrets. It is meaningless to be grinding turrets before you're 14 minutes in because they will go down 5 times easier as soon as the plating falls off. It's just early game plating, right? They insist, and I can promise you, they have calibrated this, the devs have calibrated this in such a way that they know that you cannot get your hands on the damage in super early game to just outdo the turret plating. Right? And so they only give you so little damage, they add so much turret plating, essentially in the beginning, much unbeknownst to completely new players. You should just try to win your duels and make smart item choices and maybe farm up some gold, right? You shouldn't be... Look at these 3 people here just coming over specifically to the mid to go nuts on this turret, like grinding on this thing like there is no tomorrow. And standing so close to an enemy turret when there's so little payoff is also dangerous. And I believe it's the reason why RE is going to get this kill here now. It's purely the turret. He just stood next to the turret, right? And for what? Because he doesn't understand the early game mechanic where the plating stays up, right? And so he thinks he's doing something heroic by grinding on this thing, whereas in reality it has no effect whatsoever. Yeah, and just playing emotionally here as well, right? You dive into 3 enemy players. Like you're in your feels about something, you're crying in front of your monitor or whatever. You're getting upset and everything, teary-eyed. Like, I mean, this is very clearly, what kind of decision making is this? And then you have the irony of Zyra making sure to go and stand in the one area where there is no turret coverage or no protection, right? She makes into... We see this frequently from, like, players who come from different video games like Call of Duty, where it's considered super clever to, like, back creep someone or, like, slip in the back way so you can like get somebody from behind or something, but that's not how League works, right? If you're alone and you're gonna back creep someone in a lane, so to say, like the Zyra is doing here now, like that doesn't do anything. It's not because you come from behind that you're now gonna tear him up with your Kalashnikov or something, right? You have to make sure that you're protected and that you're standing in the right areas. Yeah, and just more of the getting in your feels type of thing here. It is hilarious to me that you would opt to choose RE, who's obviously all about luring you and all about fake provocations, fake engagements, pulling back suddenly, being dodgy, but you're essentially gonna play like you're 10 foot tall or some kind of colossus of some kind. It is completely ridiculous. What kind of a character is that to like go hog wild on RE? Like, if you're going to play RE, you have to know on some level that you're precise and exact and fragile, right? You can't just go King Kong on people with RE. That's not the point of RE. You've misunderstood the type of character that she... We actually see this frequently. People consistently have gotten it in their heads to, for example, avoid characters like Aatrox. When is the last time you have seen Aatrox in one of your games? Aatrox fits 100% with the personality of the average amateur, right? You would automatically do the right thing on Aatrox because he's wired for you to get emotional, jump into duels, jump into wild exchanges, right? But no, you want to like go with some kind of faker champion, and then 5 seconds later you want to act like some kind of, I don't know, angry little boy or something. That's the third play. Yeah, we see here the very useful dot effects of Brand, can even be useful when he's dying, with the laudable commitment to following my suggestion. But yeah, consistently does not give a damn whether he lives or dies. bit of the French spirit in there, but then without the honor. And what that does is, after a long while people are continuously just forfeiting their life and dying alongside you, you end up thinking yourself that, like, yeah, I mean, how many times in a row can I run away and let this guy die by himself? Definitely there's something to people not being careful with their life has an effect on you as well. It definitely creates, at the very least, some peer pressure. We have Jinx doing the first useful thing that she's done all game, which is run away. You notice here, if you're quick enough to see it, that the third spell of Jinx here fails, of course, because the mines that she throws are very limited in what they can do. This is why Jinx is typically built maxing out her attack speed and her crit chance, because of the fact that there is really no useful ability in her kit you would want to get off cooldown. And very frequently what keeps Wukong from being a veritable menace is that the second spell, the clone spell, has a fairly long cooldown. And once you see that that thing is completely on maximum cooldown, you just kind of tap out here. In my opinion, bit of the limitations of Blitzcrank coming into play here. I can't help but think we have here on very low health Lux, very low health RE. In my personal opinion, it should have been possible for, say a Leona to definitely do something more useful with that than what you see from Blitzcrank here. This is also where this goofiness of playing Warwick in support, which would typically be frowned upon, would really be much more smart. Because here you see, like, okay, Blitzcrank, you have a really bit of a one-trick pony. Do you really need that if we're all amateurs? Isn't a solid tank just enough as a support? Do you really need all of this pulley stuff? And there's a bit of the merit here as well in going for a spread out offense. You notice you have to defend against Lux, you have to defend against RE in terms of their magic damage output. There is no way that Yone would have been able to land this kind of damage if I would have been able to go Thornmail. That is where that team effort to spread out the offense and to do a little bit of everything really comes in. And Jack Show here, Jack Show the Protean, just not capable of protecting me against this kind of wild burst damage. And as I said previously, at this point, Yone and Caitlyn have to be by a pretty significant margin the two most valuable shooters. This type of wild damage can completely change the dynamic of a game. Contrary to the way that it is typically portrayed, if you are looking to maximize the amount of killing you're doing and the amount of people you can slay, looking out for the jungle objectives can actually be very helpful to you. Especially in the case of Caitlyn, for instance, the dragon, ironically, in many cases, is going to be tanking for you. And it is a good litmus test to see what kind of effort there is to snipe people who are caught up in jungle objectives like this. Because really, when shooters are not trying to do this, it means that they're inherently unaware of what is going on in the game. When something is so beneficial for you as well as for me as a jungler, you should do this, you should be here. And too frequently, we see from shooters that this does not go on. Taking a look at the scoreboard here, this is a solidarity item. You should not get this item to help yourself out. You should only get this item if you're in an advantageous position and you want to help the team out. Here we see the results of tanking with plated steel caps. You expect to take a lot of hits and a lot of damage. It is panic mode because we cannot understand what is going on. You constantly need us to help you. You're dying and it's getting really ugly, and it turns out this is what is going on. This is the reason why we have to continuously come over to help you. It's because you're absorbing all of the damage with plated steel caps. You don't entirely seem to understand how health works in this game. You really need some kind of resistance before you're starting to slap on so much extra. When you're going up against an RE that is casting so many spells at you, spamming her abilities on you continuously, you're really leaving out the most important part here. You should be resistant to magic to some degree. And it is kind of a funny thing that many amateurs seem to think that these resistance issues will just always solve themselves. Like they will automatically just go away. It's like, no, if you're going up against burst mages and you're going up against nothing but magic damage, you should absolutely obviously have something to mitigate that. Or you will take literally all of it directly to the face, which I don't know why you would want that. The biggest issue by far in the unranked people and the amateurs and the bottom of the barrel is the boots. Like, I say it 20 billion times because, like, it's very difficult for me to avoid the topic. I'm really trying very hard to avoid the topic. But, like, I consistently see, like, for instance, here again, like your RE, you have massive added mobility because of your spell. And so the first thing that you pump money into is Sorcerer's Shoes, and the result is that at the end of the game you have only one item. This is obviously a choice of yours. If you take that 1,100 and you invest it into a weapon, you could have obviously had two items to defend yourself. Until you address that, your other item problems are never going to go away. Moving on.
at the top.